Hello. In this lesson we're going to take a look at section 3.7 Applications of Percent. Applications in a math textbook usually means word problems. And if you have a bit of a fear of word problems, you're not alone. It's typically a topic that people struggle with. One of the reasons that word problems can be so difficult is that there are so many different kinds of word problems, and each one seems to need its own methods for solving. It's a good idea to start developing some general strategies and methods for approaching word problems in general. And the textbook has a really good exposition on how to deal with general word problems, how to think about them, how to approach them. I'm not going to go over that in this lesson. Instead, I'm going to focus on some of the specific word problems that are in your 3.7 Hawks homework assignment. The reason for that is this is a homework assignment that typically causes people a bit of difficulty, and I want to make sure you have a resource that you can rely on if you get stuck on any of the questions. This is probably going to be a longer video than most of my other ones, so I might have to split it into two pieces. One thing that I recommend you do is try this assignment out for yourself. Use the little tutor button at the bottom because it's actually pretty good. It doesn't take you to a live tutor, but it will give you a step-by-step process for solving those particular problems. And if you're really stuck, take a look at this video and maybe fast forward to the question that you're having difficulty with. The other thing that I will say is that there are several methods for solving percent word problems. There's the percent equation method, which is one of my favorites. There's the percent proportion method, and then there's the method that the textbook uses and that Hawks uses. I'm going to use the textbook and Hawks method for solving the questions in this video so that it works really nicely with the tutor button down here. If people are interested in seeing some of the other methods, I can try to record a couple other videos to go over those. I'll probably do that a little bit later this week. But for now, I'm going to use the method that's done in the textbook. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started and take a look at this question right here. A car dealer earns a commission of 5% on each car he sells. What's his commission on a car that he sold for $45,000? And usually it has this bit at the end about following the problem-solving process. Again, that's referring to the exposition in the textbook, which I recommend you read. It also has a bit of fine print about rounding your answer to the nearest cent. Make sure you pay attention to the rounding because in this particular assignment, that little detail can catch you. Alright, so how do we deal with these percent word problems? Typically, each percent word problem is going to have three important numbers in it that you're going to want to pay attention to. The amount, the rate, and the base. So over here I have a little cheat sheet. The amount is the part. It's the number that's a percentage of something else. Usually it's the smaller number between the amount and the base, but not always. The rate is the easiest one to find. It's the thing that has a percent sign next to it. And the base is the whole, the total, or the original value. It's the thing that you're taking a percentage of. If you can identify those three numbers, you've done most of the hard work of the word problem. You've done the part that most people have difficulty with at any rate. So amount, rate, and base. Take a minute to digest what those things mean. How do we deal with word problems then? Once we've identified those three values, you're going to use this formula right here. The amount is equal to the rate times the base. And putting in the two numbers that you know will give you a formula that will allow you to find out the third number that you don't. And that's going to be our general process. So identifying the amount, the rate, first step, and that can be one of the trickiest ones. So taking a look at this question, you might say, well, wait a second, there's only two numbers there. How can I identify three of them? One of the numbers will always be the thing that you're looking for. It'll be one of the things that you're trying to find out in the problem. So even though it looks like there's only two numbers here, the 5% and the 45,000, there's actually a third number. It's this thing that is right here, the commission. It's what they're asking us for. That's one of the numbers, and we now have three numbers, so we can identify which one is the amount, the rate, and the base. I like to always do the rate first since it is the easiest one. And taking a look here, the thing with the percent sign is my 5%, so my rate is going to be 5%. So I can go ahead and write that in here, 5%. Alright, what about my amount and my base? Well, the amount is the part of the whole. It's the thing that's a percentage of something else. And the base is the whole, total, or original value. It's the thing I'm taking a percentage of. What are my two numbers? I have the commission that we're looking for, the commission that he earns, and this 45,000, which is the total sales cost of the car. Take a minute and think about which one you think is the amount and which one you think is the base. I recommend that you pause the video and try to come up with the answer to that particular question on your own. You don't have to do the whole question, but try to figure out which one's the amount and which one's the base, and then unpause to see if you got it right. Okay, which one did you think was the amount and which one did you think was the base? The amount is going to be the commission, and typically in commission and tax problems, the commission is going to be your amount, because a commission is just part of the total sales cost. The cost of the car, the amount that it's sold for, is your total. It's your original or base amount. So my base is going to be $45,000, and my amount is going to be the commission. Alright, so now that I've identified those three things, what do I do? Typically, your rate will be a percent, and we can't do multiplication or division with percentages directly, so you're going to have to convert that percent to a decimal. Now, I have a whole video on this, as I mentioned. You might want to watch that video if you're not sure about this process. But that's a skill that you're going to want to practice because it comes up again and again. To do that, you're going to move the decimal point 2 spaces to the left. There's no decimal point in the 5, so it starts out life at the far right. And it moves once past the 5 and one more time past nothing at all, so I have to put a placeholder 0 there. And so my percentage is going to be turned into a decimal, and it will be 0.05, or if you want 0.05. That leading 0 to the left of the decimal point, you can either put that there or not, it doesn't really matter. Alright, so my next step, I'm going to write out the formula, and my formula is the amount equals the rate times the base. And I'm just using letters here instead of the whole word. And that's pretty common for mathematics, to write out a letter in place of the whole word. And those letters represent numbers. Those are called variables. And I actually know the numbers that are associated with some of them. So my next step is going to be something that is a little bit of algebra, but it's baby steps algebra, so don't panic. Underneath my equation, it'll always be A equals R times B. You can always write that out as your equation. Underneath each letter, I'm going to directly underneath it write the number that it's equal to. And I'm going to bring down the equal sign and the multiplication exactly where they are too. Those are not going to move. I'm going to bring them straight down. So my A, I'm going to try to replace that with the number that it's equal to, but I don't know. So I'm going to write it as A still. I can't replace it with anything. My equal sign is going to be replaced with an equal sign. My R, we said, is 0.05. That's what it's equal to. I'm going to bring down that multiplication sign, and my B for base is 45,000. Alright, and now I have a multiplication that I can do. 0.05 times 45,000. Well, I'm not going to do that on pen and paper. I'm going to cheat and use a calculator. And it's perfectly fine if you do so as well. Some of these decimal arithmetic questions are going to be pretty ugly, so a calculator is actually very handy for this particular section. So 0.05 times 45,000, if I entered that correctly, is telling me 2,250 is the answer here. So I'm going to go ahead and write that in, 2,250. I'm going to double check that the thing that they're asking for is what I'm telling them. So what is his commission? That's what the question says. And commission was my amount, and I solved for the amount. So that should be correct. I'm going to go ahead and submit the answer. And it says, well done. Oh, that's good. That feels good. I love seeing that little green bar. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at another question after this, and I might skip around a little bit. I have a certain order that I want to do these in, and I definitely don't want to do this one next. That's a complicated one that we'll take a look at a little bit later on, as is that one. Let's see if we can find, this is a good one. This is very similar to the one we just did with a slight complication. So let's take a look at this particular one. And I'm just going to clear out some of the stuff I have here so that we can have a blank screen. Alright, a sales clerk, so similar to the previous one, receives a monthly salary of $700 plus a commission of 7% on all sales over $2,800. What did the clerk earn in a month that she sold $14,800 in merchandise? And again, follow the problem-solving process and round to the nearest cent. We didn't have to worry about rounding in the last one, and we probably won't for this one, but some of them it will make a difference, so do pay attention. Alright, so this feels similar to the previous one. Let's see if we can start working this out. I've got 7% as my rate for sure, because anything with a percent sign has got to be your rate, most likely, with a couple exceptions that we'll see a little bit later on. And this one's a little bit tricky, because if I look at the amount, Well, the amount's going to be my commission again, so I can put that in just like before. But let's be careful, because the thing that they're asking me for, and I'll bring this up again when we get to it, is what did the sales clerk earn? Well, she didn't just earn her commission. She earned $700 as a salary plus her commission. So I'm going to have to pay attention to that at the very end. My base is a little bit tricky here too, because she didn't just get commission on the $14,800 that she sold. She got commission on the sales that were over $2,800. That means the first $2,800 worth of sales didn't count for her. She didn't get any money for that at all. She only can base her commission on the sales that she made after that. So how much money did she make, or for the company after that? How much did she make in sales after the first $2,800? Well, you'll have to subtract to find out. $14,800 minus $2,800. And this is actually not too difficult to do because of that. 800 is kind of nice. 800 minus 800 just cancels out, and then 14,000 minus 2,000 should give us 12,000. So that'll be our base, $12,000. And again, we can set this one up just like the last one. Amount equals rate times base. And I can just fill things in directly underneath each of these. I'm going to write the number that is associated with that particular letter. Now, you might be tempted to skip this. You might just think, oh, I know I have to multiply. Why can't I just multiply? Do yourself a huge favor and get in the habit of writing out each step. Those who are successful with math, especially algebra, write out every single step and don't skip steps. Success in algebra is all about being meticulous and writing out your steps. Mistakes happen when you skip steps and don't write things out. The more you write, the faster things will go, because you won't have to repeat the same assignments over and over again until you get them. So trust me on this one and write this stuff out. So my A, I don't know. I'm going to leave it as the letter A. Bring down my equal sign, and those two things are super important. Please make sure you write the A equals, even though it seems like, hey, I don't need to do that. My rate, again, you need to change that percent to a decimal. Well, I'm assuming that you've watched the previous video and have practiced this or have read it in the textbook, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but 7% changed to a decimal should be 0.07, and then times my base, which we said was 12,000. So I just replaced R with the number that it's equal to, 7%, but I changed it to a decimal, and I replaced B with the 12,000 that we figured out. A didn't get replaced with anything, I just left it as an A. So again, I'm going to cheat and use a calculator here. It's not cheating, it's actually perfectly fine, and I encourage you to do the same. This section is not about decimal arithmetic, it's about solving percent word problems, so definitely use the calculator to do some of the more tedious arithmetic here. 12,000, that's what I was looking for. Alright, and I'm getting $840 as my answer there. So I'm getting here, A is equal to, and we just saw it, and I forgot it already, $840. Alright, so it's tempting to just write that in as your final answer and be done with it and be happy, but we've got to, again, read through the question and make sure that that's what they're asking for, and in fact it's not. They're asking, what did the clerk earn that month? Well, she earned the $700 salary plus the $840, so I'm going to have to add $700 to this. And it doesn't matter what order you add two things in, as long as you pay attention to the signs. So here I'm going to go ahead and add 800 plus 700 is 1,500, and the 40 is just 40. So that should be my final answer. So let's go ahead and type that in and hit submit and see what it says. And fantastic, it says. And Hawks is kind of funny. I like that it gives me these little encouraging things at the bottom. I do wonder why they always feel the need to capitalize my entire name. I think they probably do that to everyone, but I find that a little bit silly. Alright, so let's move on and see if we can do some more of these. And maybe with the next one I can maybe justify having to write all this stuff out. Show you one where it's a little bit different. So I'm going to skip around a bit. And okay, this is a great one. Let's do this one. And let me get my board set up here. Okay, so it says the property taxes on a business office were $3,000. What was the tax rate if the business office was valued at $200,000. And again, follow the problem-solving process and answer to the nearest hundredth of a percent if necessary. Couple things clue you into the fact that this is going to be a bit different from your previous examples. First of all, there's no percent in here, is there? No. In fact, they're asking me what was the tax rate. That rate there is a key word. I know rate is one of the things that is one of these three values, and they're telling me that that's what we're looking for. So here, in this particular case, my rate is the unknown. That's what I'm trying to find. Well, that's different from the previous ones where I was always finding the amount. Now the other two numbers, the 3,000 and the 200,000, are going to be the base and amount somehow. So I have to figure out which one is which. So again, think things through. The amount is always the part. It's the number that's a percentage of something else. And the base is always the whole, total, or original value. Take a minute to think things through and see if you can decide for yourself which one is which. Hit the pause button, and then when you're pretty sure, unpause and see if you're right. Okay, if you said that the 3,000 was the amount, you were correct. The taxes are always going to be part of the total cost of something. You wouldn't pay more than the total cost typically, or you wouldn't think of the cost of something as being part of your taxes. That doesn't quite really make sense. So in this case, my taxes, the $3,000, are going to be the amount. That's the thing that's a percentage of my total cost of the business, which was $200,000. Alright, so now I have enough to set up my equation. The amount equals the rate times the base. And I'm going to replace each letter with the number that goes with it. And again, I'm going to write directly underneath. I'm even putting these little arrows to show that that's what I'm doing. And I'm going to bring down the equal sign and the multiplication sign exactly where they are. Got to spread these out a little bit because the numbers are wider than the letters, but same idea. And underneath the A for amount, instead of writing A, I'm going to write the number that's the amount, 3,000. And then I'm going to bring down my equal sign, and then I'm going to bring down my rate. But I don't know what the rate is, so I'll leave it as an R. And then I'm going to bring down my multiplication, and I do know what the base B is. It's $200,000. All right, and this is what your equation should look like. This is different from the previous one because instead of having A equals something, I have 3,000 equals something. Make sure that your equation looks like this. Resist the temptation to try to say something like R equals 3,000 times 200,000. This is a situation where we're going to have to do something a little bit different because I can't just multiply. I can't just multiply R times 200,000 because I don't know what R is. I'm going to have to use a little bit of algebra to solve this. Now, I hate to break the A word out on you guys, but we are going to be doing some algebra in this class. If you've totally forgotten how algebra works, don't worry. We're doing a little bit of baby steps algebra this week, and we're not getting that deep into it. The idea is whenever you have the letter multiplied by a number, you're going to divide by that number. So in these particular equations, as a crux, if you don't feel comfortable with algebra, it's always going to be the left side divided by the right side. You want to get used to thinking about it in terms of algebra though, so I will explain it in terms of algebra, but if you don't really feel comfortable with algebra yet, that's what it's going to look like. That won't always be the case, so don't memorize that. That's not always going to be the case. The thing is that you're always dividing by the number that's multiplied with your letter. So whatever number is being multiplied with your unknown is the second number in that division. That's what you're dividing by. And the way that we typically show this with algebra is to use a fraction bar for division. And I'm actually going to divide on both sides of this equal sign. I'm going to divide both sides by the number that's with my R, which is the 200,000. So I'm going to divide by 200,000 on both sides, which on the right side will cancel out. If you don't feel comfortable using a fraction bar for division, it is perfectly okay to write a little division symbol here instead. But you're going to want to start getting comfortable with the fraction bar for division because it actually makes things a bit easier. Now the whole idea here, and we're going to get into this in more detail next week, is that that's just going to cancel out. So I'm going to have R on the right side and 3,000 divided by 200,000 on the left. When you do that division, be careful. It's always top divided by bottom. So a mistake that people often make with these questions is they divide in the wrong order, and the order that you divide in matters. So it's going to be 3,000 divided by 200,000. Just make sure I have the right number of zeros in there, and I hit equals, and it looks like a horrible decimal, and that's okay. 0.015 is what I'm getting here. So let's go ahead and write that in. Oops, change the color back to black here. 0.015 equals R, my rate. Now don't panic that you're getting a little bit of a decimal. It makes sense because 200,000 isn't going to go into 3,000. It doesn't fit in there. It goes in less than one whole time, so you expect a decimal. And in this case, that decimal is 0.015. So I found my R, but remember that the rate is always supposed to be a percent, and this isn't a percent, it's a decimal. So in this case, whenever you're solving for the rate, you're going to have to convert that decimal back to a percent. And if you remember how to do that from either reading the book or watching the other video, you move the decimal place once, twice, in this case to the right. And so my final answer will be 1.5%. And that's my R. Okay, so I have enough to answer this particular question. I'm going to double check what was the tax rate. That's good. And they say round to the nearest hundredth of a percent if necessary. Well, it's not necessary because this percent only goes to the tenths place. It doesn't go out to the hundredths, so I can just leave it as 1.5% and submit my answer. All right, and it says correct. Those are three fairly basic questions. I'm going to do some more of these, but after splitting this video off so that this one doesn't go too long. So if this was helpful to you, great. You might want to watch the second half of this video where I'll go over some of the more complicated questions in this section.